Picture this. You're in a bustling shoe store parking lot. Summer afternoon, parents are helping kids try on new shoes. You know, the air is thick with anticipation for the new school year. It's that like ordinary scene we all recognize.
Yeah.
But for one family, that normalcy was just shattered in an instant.
Oh,
And that's where our deep dive begins today. The perplexing case of Hassani Camp, a 5-year-old boy who vanished from that very setting back in 2009. And the unsettling questions surrounding his foster father, Lewis Ross.
yeah. You know what's so intriguing about Hassani's case is that despite the intense scrutiny on Lewis and the cloud of suspicion that's lingered for over a decade,
Yeah.
he's never been charged.
Right.
So we're going to examine why. Even with the police openly stating their belief in his involvement, why the evidence has never been enough to secure a conviction.
And that's what I find so fascinating about this case. We have these eyewitness accounts,
Right.
the conflicting details about Hassani's disability and those leg braces he supposedly wore.
Uh-huh.
And then there's that odd trip to the junkyard. So much to unpack, but let's start with the moment everything changed. August 21st, 2009, Oakland, California.
Friday afternoon.
Right.
Hassani, who had cerebral palsy,
Right.
was reportedly left alone in the car for just a few minutes, while his foster father, Lewis, ran inside the shoe store.
Okay.
When Lewis returned, Hassani was gone.
Now, initially, there was confusion about whether Hassani was even wearing his leg braces.
Yeah.
Some witnesses claimed they saw him with them. Others said he wasn't. And that discrepancy really could have hampered those crucial early search efforts.
Absolutely. And that's one detail that's always bothered me. If Hassani was indeed wearing those braces,
Right.
it would make it significantly more difficult for him to wander off on his own.
Right.
So the possibility that this crucial information was initially misreported just adds another layer of complexity to the case.
For sure. And of course, this wasn't just a local news story. The case quickly drew national attention,
Oh, yeah.
fueled in no small part by Nancy Grace's relentless coverage. The FBI got involved, and the pressure on law enforcement to find Hassani intensified with each passing day.
And with that level of scrutiny, it's really no surprise that the focus quickly shifted to Lewis Ross.
Yeah.
There were just too many inconsistencies in his account of that day, too many unanswered questions about his actions before and after Hassani's disappearance.
Like that trip to the junkyard.
Yes.
It seems Lewis drove there with Hassani earlier that day, but never actually got out of the car. Why go to a junkyard and just sit there?
Exactly. And it gets even more curious when you consider Lewis's reaction to the polygraph test he was asked to take.
Oh, right.
He failed it, which he vehemently disputed, but the very fact that he refused to accept the results,
Yeah.
it further fueled that public suspicion.
And then there was that bombshell revelation, the
Oh,
leaked text message,
wow.
where Lewis threatened to leave Hassani on public transportation. Now, he claimed it was just a joke, but in the context of a missing child investigation,
Right.
it painted a very troubling picture. And let's not forget the decision by Child Protective Services to remove Hassani's sister from the foster home.
Right.
That action, while not directly related to the investigation, certainly added weight to the growing suspicions surrounding Lewis.
For sure.
So we have this vulnerable 5-year-old who vanishes under questionable circumstances.
Mm-hmm.
His foster father is acting suspiciously, failing polygraphs,
Yeah.
and has a history of threatening behavior.
It seems like an open and shut case, right?
You would think so, wouldn't you? And in a stunning turn of events, both Lewis and his fiancée Jennifer were actually arrested.
Wow.
Lewis was booked on suspicion of murder Jennifer as an accessory. It felt like a breakthrough, a moment of hope for a community that was desperate for answers.
But this is where the case takes that truly perplexing turn.
Yeah.
Despite what seemed like mounting evidence and the police publicly stating their belief that Lewis was responsible, both he and Jennifer were released without charges.
The lack of sufficient evidence, the ever-present, beyond a reasonable doubt standard in criminal cases.
Right. It often clashes with the public's desire for swift justice. And it's a frustration we see time and again in these complex investigations.
And that frustration was deeply felt by the Oakland community. They weren't going to let Hassani's case fade away. A remarkable woman named Lynn Miller spearheaded an incredible grassroots effort to find Hassani.
Wow.
They organized dives in a nearby lake, searched parks, and plastered missing posters everywhere you looked.
Yeah, it was just a truly remarkable display of community dedication, driven by the belief that someone, somewhere, might have a piece of information that could lead them to Hassani. They even followed a tip from a psychic,
Wow.
which led them to search a state park. But ultimately, nothing concrete emerged.
So you have this massive search effort,
Right.
a suspect who seems to have every reason to lie,
Yeah.
and yet Hassani's case remains unsolved.
Hmm.
It's enough to make you wonder, what does it actually take to get justice for a missing child? Especially when those closest to them are suspected of wrongdoing.
It's a question that haunts so many families who find themselves in similar situations. And sadly, it's a question that resonates even more powerfully in our next case. While Hassani's disappearance was met with immediate attention,
Right?
Tiana Kchner's story experiences a different kind of systemic failure. One where the alarm bells simply didn't ring for years.
Years. You're saying this child went missing and no one even reported it for years? That's almost impossible to comprehend. How could something like that slip through the
And
cracks?
that's precisely the question that plagued investigators. When Tiana's case finally came to light in 2010, it wasn't a stranger abduction.
Right.
It wasn't a sudden disappearance in a crowded place. Tiana was last seen by anyone outside her immediate family in 2006.
4 years.
Yeah.
4 years before anyone even thought to ask, where is Tiana? It's baffling.
Yeah.
And it points to a complete breakdown in the systems that are supposed to be in place to protect children.
What makes it even more disturbing is the fact that Child Protective Services had a long history with the Kchner family. We're not just talking about 1 or 2 visits. There were repeated interactions, multiple reports of potential neglect, and even a period where CPS was actively searching for Tiana.
Wait, CPS was already looking for her. So they knew she was missing, but somehow that information never led to a full-blown investigation.
That's the truly baffling part. It seems there was a disconnect, a failure to communicate, and perhaps even a level of complacency that allowed Tiana's case to languish in bureaucratic limbo. It wasn't until Tiana's great-grandmother grew suspicious of the conflicting stories she was hearing from Tiana's mother, Tricia,
Okay.
that the real alarm bells finally started ringing.
So as a family member who finally raised the red flag, not the very agency tasked with protecting children. That's incredibly unsettling.
Yeah.
What exactly was Tricia telling people about Tiana's whereabouts?
The stories varied, which only heightened the great-grandmother's concerns.
Yeah.
Sometimes Tricia would say Tiana was living with relatives, other times she'd claim she'd passed away. The inconsistencies were glaring, and thankfully, Tiana's great-grandmother trusted her gut and contacted the police.
And thank goodness she did. That one phone call finally set in motion the investigation that would uncover the horrifying truth about Tiana's fate. It's a reminder that sometimes it's the people closest to a situation who hold the key to unlocking the truth.
Absolutely. The police, acting on the great-grandmother's tip, descended upon the Kchner's residence, and what they discovered was nothing short of chilling. Hidden beneath the trailer, they found a concrete-filled bin. It was a gruesome discovery.
Oh, wow.
And as they began the laborious process of excavating that bin, the grim reality began to set in.
They found her remains, didn't they? It's the kind of detail that sends shivers down your spine. To think of a child's body hidden away like that, discarded like garbage, it's almost too horrific to comprehend.
It's a level of depravity that's difficult to process.
Ah,
And as the investigation unfolded, the accounts from Tiana's siblings and other family members began to paint a disturbing picture of what might have happened in that household.
so there were witnesses,
Yeah.
people who had seen something, heard something, that could shed light on what happened to Tiana.
Yes, and their stories, while fragmented and sometimes conflicting, offered glimpses into a world of potential abuse and a deliberate attempt to conceal the truth. One sibling recalled a specific incident where Tiana apparently hit her head in the bathtub.
Okay.
They described seeing her being carried out of the bathroom by Jordan Tiana's stepfather with visible injuries.
And after that, Tiana just vanished. Did no one question her absence, demand to know where she was?
That's what's so perplexing.
Yeah.
It seems the family was given various explanations for Tiana's disappearance, none of which seemed to add up.
Right.
And according to those siblings, the adults in that household were very good at maintaining a facade of normalcy, of silencing any questions or concerns.
But surely there must have been signs, red flags that someone could have picked up on. A child doesn't just disappear without a trace.
There were certainly signs.
Yeah.
And the siblings would later recall some of them. They described a foul odor that permeated the house around the time Tiana disappeared. And one even witnessed Tricia asking a relative to help her move that very bin that would later become Tiana's final resting place.
It's like a horrifying puzzle, each piece more disturbing than the last. And the question that lingers even after the discovery of Tiana's remains is, how could this have happened? How could a child be subjected to such alleged abuse and neglect, and how could those responsible seemingly get away with it?
It's a question that cuts to the core of our justice system, and it's one we'll grapple with as we delve deeper into the baffling lack of accountability in Tiana's case.
I mean, it's almost unfathomable that despite that grim discovery of Tiana's remains, the disturbing accounts from her siblings, and Trisha's own admission that Tiana died in her care, no murder charges were ever filed. How is that even possible?
Well, that's where the complexities of the legal system, particularly in cases involving child abuse and neglect,
Yeah,
they really become apparent. While a DHS investigation found Trisha and Jordan responsible for negligent treatment, they weren't found culpable for physical abuse. And without concrete evidence directly linking them to Tiana's death,
right.
proving intent and establishing a clear cause of death became a seemingly insurmountable hurdle.
So negligent treatment, but not physical abuse.
Hmm.
Even with all we've learned about the alleged conditions in that home,
Right.
the conflicting stories, the hidden remains,
Yeah.
it just doesn't add up.
It is a frustrating outcome, especially when you consider the emotional weight of the evidence.
Yeah,
The clear signs of a system that failed to protect Tiana, but legally speaking, suspicion and moral outrage,
right.
they aren't enough to secure a conviction. Prosecutors need that irrefutable link, that undeniable proof,
Yeah.
which in cases like this can be incredibly difficult to obtain.
And tragically, that lack of irrefutable proof leaves Tiana's case, much like Hassani's, shrouded in this cloud of unanswered questions.
Yeah.
We'd have these strong suspicions, disturbing evidence, and yet no one has been held accountable for their deaths. It's a gut-wrenching reminder of the limitations of our justice system, especially when it comes to protecting the most vulnerable among us.
And it brings us back to that central question that's been weaving through both of these deeply unsettling cases. How can we prevent these tragedies from happening again? What changes need to occur within these systems to ensure that no child falls through the cracks like Hassani and Tiana?
It's a question that demands our attention,
Absolutely.
our collective action, and a willingness to confront these uncomfortable truths about the system designed to protect children. Overworked social workers, bureaucratic loopholes, a lack of communication. These are just some of the factors that contributed to these heartbreaking outcomes.
We need to demand better funding for child protection agencies,
Right?
more rigorous oversight, and a commitment to early intervention when those red flags appear. Yeah. We need to empower those who suspect abuse or neglect to speak up to report their concerns without fear of reprisal.
It's about shifting our perspective from reactive to proactive,
Yes.
from simply responding to tragedies to actively preventing them. It's about recognizing that child protection isn't just the responsibility of social workers and law enforcement.
Right.
It's a shared responsibility that falls on all of us.
And it starts with awareness, with recognizing the signs of abuse and neglect,
Right.
with understanding the complexities of these cases, and with demanding accountability from those in positions of power. We need to be vigilant to advocate for those who can't advocate for themselves,
Yeah.
and to never, ever turn a blind eye to the suffering of a child.
The stories of Hassani Camp and Tiana Kchner are stark reminders that we can't afford to be complacent.
Mm-hmm.
Their legacies should fuel our determination to fight for a world where every child is safe, protected, and given the chance to thrive. We can honor their memories by demanding better, by working together to create a future where these tragedies become unthinkable, not just unfortunate realities.
And remember, if you suspect a child is being abused or neglected, please don't hesitate to contact the authorities. Your voice, your concern could be the one that makes all the difference. There are resources available like the Child Help National Child Abuse Hotline at 1-800-422-4453, ready to offer support and guidance. We owe it to Hassani, to Tiana, and to every child who deserves a safe and loving childhood to never ever stay silent.